كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So now today's session we will be doing the Kitab al-Hadana, the chapter regarding custody and who will get custody. We'll go through the details of that inshallah, in terms of listing the order. We will do a bit of listing for those people who find it tricky to understand relatives and relations and things. Just make sure you're sitting with a pencil or a pen or something with some paper to get ready to write the notes of who we are talking about. And where you think you're going to get confused, just pause, just understand who we talked about there, and then just move on. And inshallah, hopefully this will become easier to untangle and to understand what he's talking about. Then if this person who had the right of custody gets married to somebody, do they keep this right of custody? So we'll mention something about that as well. Then if the people that we first listed, meaning generally the females that we first list, if they are not there, then what happens? Do the males of the family then get custody right? So that we will talk about. Then the next major ruling is up till what age will that certain person, certain member of the family keep have custody over a boy and over a girl? Is there a difference between them in terms of age? Who will keep them and when and how long? So that inshallah we'll talk about. We'll also talk about why these rulings apply, inshallah. So hopefully that is understood there when we do it. And then we will talk about if the man was married to a Ahlul Kitab woman and they had children, then does the wife, the mother of the child, have custody rights over that child or not? We'll talk about that. Then if the divorced woman, the divorcee, if she wishes to move, she wants to move, migrate, she wants to go to another city, another town, another village, whatever it is, then is she allowed to do this? And if she can, then how far the distance can be. We'll talk about all of that, so that the other parent, meaning generally the father, would not be harmed. So anyway, we'll talk about that inshallah. We'll hopefully get the chance to also start this next discussion where he concludes the rulings of nafaqat. He starts off mentioning regarding the nafaqah of the parents. We'll talk about the concept here inshallah, when a person owes nafaqah to the parents. And so now he mentions that if there's a separation between husband and wife, the mother will be more entitled to the young children, obviously because she has more compassion, and through that compassion she will be able to take care of the young babies, young children, much better than the father would be able to. Now if the mother is not there, then what happens? Then the right moves on to other female members. So the concept is the right will move to always, because in terms of the child, the mother gets preference first, right? So therefore always the mother's side of the family will get preference over the father's side of the family. So the point is that the next person in line will be the maternal grandmother. So the maternal grandmother will get preference after the mother. Number 2 is maternal grandmother. And you carry on going up, right? So if the maternal grandmother is not there, then the great maternal grandmother, then great, you carry on going up as much as you can to find somebody. So that's the way it goes in terms of right. Then if there's nobody in the maternal grandmother's side there, then you go to the paternal grandmother. So the father's mother comes after the mother's mother. So they get preference always first. The concept is mother's side will get preference because obviously this is a right which is attained from the mother, right? The mother was the first one. Then if there is no grandparent like this, female grandparents like this, then we move on to the sisters. So the sisters of this child. Remember, when we're talking about, whichever relative it is always the focus is the relation to this child. So when we're saying grandmother is in relation to this child's grandmother. Likewise, when you say, whichever grandmother that is in relation to the child, right? So when you say sisters, it's talking about the sisters of this particular child. Obviously, if they're of that age that they're able to look after their younger sibling, or then they will be preferred. That's the next, and obviously the one who is a full sister, the full sister will get preference over half sisters like that. And the one who is, sister from mother's side, sharing the same mother, will get preference in comparison to the sister who shares the same father. Because remember, mother's side will always get preference. Then comes the full sister's children. So it would be the babies, the one that is in question here, the baby's nieces, right? The baby's niece will be taken into consideration. But which niece? The niece from full sister, right? Likewise, the next person in line will be the niece from the half sister which shares the same mother. Okay, so the same mother, the niece, the daughter of that sister, basically. So that's the next person in line. Then, according to the fatwa, according to the correct opinion, there's a little interject here. There's somebody that interrupts the order, and that is the khala. That is in essence the maternal aunt, meaning the mother's sisters. So the mother's sister will come next, right? So the mother's sister will get that preference in line. Then comes after that, maternal sister. Obviously maternal sister full, meaning the mother's full sister, then the mother's half sister but from her mother, and then the mother's half sister from her father. So that order is still continual there too. Okay, but then after the mother's sisters are finished, there's no one there, then it goes to the niece from that sister who shares the same father, right? So the baby here, the baby's sisters, which sister? Half sister who has the same father as this baby. So that sister's daughter, right? That sister's daughter, obviously provided that they are old enough. So that's the order here. So otherwise the sisters' nieces basically would have been in order, but as we see here, there is a interruption by the khala. Okay, because al-khalatu kal-um, the khala is like the mother, so these kind of preference, she's just pushed up in order a little bit. Then after the sisters are finished, then comes the amma, meaning the paternal aunt, the sisters of the father, and then they're in the same order, right? The full sister first, and the one that shares the same mother, and then the one who shares the same father. Then comes the mother's the mother of this child, the mother's khala. So it would be the mother's sister, right? Hopefully people understood that, right? Just slow it down if you have to and just write it out. So it'll be the mother's khala, meaning mother's sister, right? But that would make it the baby's grand aunt, right? From her mother's side, from the baby's mother's side, right? So it'll be the baby's mother's sister. Hopefully people understood. So that's the next person in line. Then it's the father's, so the mother's father's sister, like this. So like this, it will carry on going. And then the mother's paternal aunt. So it'll be the mother's father's sister. And then it would be the father's father's sister. So that's the order there. Obviously, this is in relation to the child's father's sister. So all of these are obviously in relation to the child. They are grand uncles and aunties. But if you remember the concept that always the mother's side get preference, then the father's side, then hopefully people should understand this. Then comes the rule he mentions, because obviously this is carries on going. You can carry on going with this ordering. So he just mentions, generally speaking, that anyone who gets married from amongst these people. So let's just say the mother, the first person in line, mother is the one who gets custody, right? But if she goes and gets married to somebody who is not the child's mahram relative, then what happens? They lose the right of custody. It's not that they can't still, have custody. It's just that they lose the right. They will not be entitled to this custody anymore. Obviously, if nobody else is looking after the child, then she will still carry on looking after the child, right? But the point here is that she will not have that entitlement, that first right of looking after the child. So the father could say of this baby, I want the child now, and she would have to give over the child, because we can understand that when somebody gets married, then that when a woman here gets married who's got custody, to that child is going to become a stepfather. And generally speaking, steps don't really look after their children the way they look after, meaning they don't look after their steps the way they look after their own children, and then they sometimes think of this child as just getting in the way and things like that. So many a times this child is neglected, so that's why we won't make this child go through this. So like we prayed before, like we understood before, the concept that is the focus is on the child, to make sure that what is best for the child is done. But if that person got married to a mahram relative, so for instance, the mother got married to her ex-husband's brother, right? So the mother got married to her brother-in-law, in essence, right? So if she got married to him, now that brother-in-law is mahram to that child, right? So that's why she will not lose that right, because there will still be that love and care from the perspective that this is my blood relative, this is my relative, So that's the reason why they won't lose that right. Then, after all of this, it mentions that if there is no woman that can look after this child now from the family, from this family that we talked about, there's nobody there, then the father will now get custody. The men will now come into play. So whoever is closest asaba will get first. So obviously the father is the one who will get the right of custody first, and then it will be the grandfather, and it carries on going in order of asaba. So in order of asaba, hopefully you've prayed already the order of asaba. It's in essence, it would be down, but because this is a baby, it would be the furu first, meaning but because this is a baby we're discussing, they're not going to have a child. So that's why here in this, in this concept, it will be the father going upwards, grandfather, great grandfather, like this. And if there's nobody, then from that child you go sideways, meaning brothers. You go to the brothers of that child, and if there's nobody, then you go down from the brother, meaning the nephews of that child. And if there's nobody, you go back to the child and you go up, meaning father, and then you go sideways, meaning you go to the uncle, the am. Right, so you go to like this. You kind of find somebody, right? You'll be able to find somebody who is in order of asaba. If there's no am, then the am's son, the ibnul am, like this, and you keep going. If you can't find nobody, you go to the grandfather, and you go from the grandfather, you offshoot grandfather's brother's son, like this, and you carry on going until you find somebody who will be related to this child, who will be able to look after this child. Then it mentions that the mother and grandmother, meaning the women, obviously mother, grandmother mentioned here to represent all of the women, that women's side would be more entitled to a boy until he becomes independent. By what do we mean by independence? We mean that he can eat himself, he can drink himself, he can clothe himself where he's clothed himself, he can do istinja, he can clean himself when he uses the toilet. So the fourth one here is the main one, because that's the age, that's the last one, right? Eating, drinking and wearing clothes oneself will happen at an earlier age, but generally speaking, washing oneself after using the loo, after using the toilet, and cleaning oneself, that happens a little bit later. So up until this age of independence, the child will stay with, the boy, should we say, will stay with the females. Okay? Now, what is the reason for this particular thing, right? So the reason is because, as mentioned in many books, is that up until this age, the age of independence, they needed that care. That once they have become independent, they are able to do these things themselves. They now need to be taught the mannerism of men, chivalry and all of these things. They need to be taught how to be a man. And obviously the father will be much more able to teach him the manners of a man, to keep him upright, and to teach him certain things, right? So to discipline him and all of these things. So this is the reason why then after this age, then the child will be given, the boy, should I say, will be given to the father. And Imam Khassaf mentions that this age is around about 7 years old. So he says 7 years old, just so that we have a guide as to what age we're talking about here. So this is what we would say nowadays, that's until 7 years old, the mother will keep the child. Beyond that, the father will be given the boy. We're talking about boy here, sorry. Then, in terms of the girl, who is more entitled to the girl? So the mother, again, the mother's side, all the women, they are more entitled to the girl up until first it mentions up until she reaches bulugh, meaning puberty, until she starts menstruating. Because once she reaches the age of independence, so she's now become independent at the age of 7 or so, she now needs to be taught the adab, the mannerism, the way of living of a woman, how to be a woman. She needs to be taught that. And obviously a mother will be much more able upon, or the females will be much more able upon teaching her that. So that's why beyond 7 she will still keep the girl. But once the girl reaches the age of puberty, the age of hayd, she now needs to be protected from people who will prey on her, people who will look at her with desire and maybe see that this is a very easy, vulnerable person who doesn't have a father. So they will easily prey on her. So that's why the father will then be given custody over this girl, so that he'll be able to protect her better. That's the general case. Now, having said that, right, many books have mentioned that that is only in relation to the mother and the grandmother. Anybody else that was given, any other woman, let's just say a sister or an auntie, was given the custody over this girl, then once she reaches an age where she could be desired, meaning that she starts to form features, I'm sure people know, maybe around about, I would say probably the age of 9, where she starts to now form features, body features, and now she can be desired, then this girl will be given over to the father. So this would be before the starting of her menstruation, okay? Because obviously there's many things that go wrong. Otherwise, I'm sure people know of these things, horror cases, unfortunately. Then people have to live through that trauma of having been abused at that kind of age. So that's the reason we understand that the father needs to now take over, because he has to protect that girl, because she is somebody who is now possibly desired because she's forming features. So that's that ruling. Then if the mother is a dhimmiya, meaning an Ahlul Kitab, so let's say the Muslim man married a woman, somebody of the book, one of the people of the book, right? So he married a Christian or Jewish or somebody lady, right? He married somebody of the people of the book, and then obviously she gave birth. So then does she get the same right as this? So no, she won't get that same right. She will only keep the child. Remember, she will keep the child still, but she will only keep the child up until the age where the child starts to understand religion a little bit, meaning starts to understand my mother or whoever it is that's praying, we're going to the church now, starts to understand, right? So once the baby starts to understand, the baby will be still baby, right? It will still be quite young. Once they start to understand and incline towards that kind of life, before that, the child will be handed over to the father. Because if we keep the child with the mother, there will be obviously harm to that child, because the child will then incline towards the other religion. So we can understand that's why. But up until then, we can see that the child will still be given to the females or the mother, right? Because it will be more compassionate for that particular child. So always the focus is on the child. Then the next ruling comes regarding if the divorcee now, she wants to move, she wants to now migrate or move to some other place. So can she do that? So quite frankly, quite understandably here, it mentions that if she is going somewhere to an extent to so far away where it doesn't allow the father of these children to be able to visit them, then she can't do that. She can't go so far away. The only place that meaning the only time she can do this is if two conditions are met. One condition is if the husband had married her in that city, in that place, right? So if the husband had married her there and that place is her hometown, that's where she's from. Okay, so she can go back if two conditions are met. One is that where she is going to a city. Let's just use examples we can understand. So let's say currently she lives in London with her husband, but originally she is from, let's say she is from Scotland somewhere, or she's from Birmingham or Manchester, right? So if the husband had married her there, let's say he had married her in Manchester, and obviously she's from Manchester, so then from London she can go and she can move back to Manchester because he married her there. That's the first condition met. And the second condition is that that's her hometown, that's where she's originally from. She cannot then move if she decides, not from there, but let's say she's in London, she decides to move some other town, she wants to move somewhere else, or she wants to go to a different country. She can't do that because that's not her hometown, nor did the husband marry her there. Both conditions have to be met. Unless obviously if the husband consents, because then that's something which he's willing to give up. So that's understood, because obviously otherwise it will harm the father, because he will not be able to visit his children. So this is important, obviously, especially nowadays, that harm should not be, should not be towards any of the parents, both of them. Why? Because we have to understand that from the perspective of this child needs a mother in that child's life, in his or her life, as well as a father in his or her life. Remember, the child has done nothing wrong, so the child deserves to have a mother and a father in their life. Yes, obviously the two parents, maybe they didn't get on, but that doesn't mean that they will not be able to care for their child. So it's important that people understand this from a justice perspective, from a neutral perspective, and hopefully people can understand this. Then he mentions one or two offshoot rulings just to conclude this chapter of custody rights. So if the mother, if she is currently living, meaning when she got divorced, she was currently living in a village, and she moves from that village to a city, then she will be allowed to do that, because that's more beneficial for the child. Because generally speaking, the people of the city were a bit more civilized and a bit more were a bit more you had the posh people living in the city, the people who had the better language, and things like that, right? Whereas the people in the village were like Bedouins, right? They didn't have much education, facilities wise, and everything wasn't much there. So that's why she was allowed to move from the village, or you can say the village of that particular city, to the inner part of that city. But the other way around, she was not allowed to do. So if she was already living in the city, then she moves to the outskirts without the husband's consent, meaning she moves to the outskirts. Then because this would be harmful for that child, she's not allowed to do that. Okay? And likewise, if she moves from one village, you can say, to another village, or one city to another city, all of those things would be allowed. But provided it's the rules that we prayed before, that it's not harming the father, he can still visit. Now comes the next part of the chapter, you can say, towards the completion of the rulings of nafaqat. So first, because we started this whole kitab of nafaqat, he wants to just complete the different types of nafaqah that is owed. So we talked about the wife's nafaqah first, we talked about the children's nafaqah. Now we talk about the nafaqah in between. Because we talked about the children's nafaqah, we also talked about the children's custody. So that was just the point that was connected to there. Now comes the nafaqah, the other type of nafaqah that are owed to other people of the family. So the next people in line is obviously the ascendants, the parents, grandparents, and so on. So the nafaqah of these people is also wajib upon a person who is rich enough to be able to afford to do so. But which type of richness are we talking about? So it mentions that the richness of fitra, yani yasar al-fitra, it says, meaning that a person who is able to pay sadaqatul fitr on that particular day, right? So if a person on that day has, meaning just that, because remember, it's not the richness of zakat here, meaning that the person in zakat has to have that wealth for a whole year for them to then be considered somebody who's, we call sahibun nisab, person who is got the threshold to pay zakat. Here in sadaqatul fitr, the person only needs that amount of money, the same amount of money, or the nisab amount of money, but only for the day of from the time of sadaqatul fitr, right? So if they have from the time of sadaqatul fitr that amount of money, the nisab amount, then they will have to pay sadaqatul fitr even if they have not held that for a whole year. So in the same way over here, if a person, not only if a person has what the yasar al-fitra means, in essence, if you remember, we prayed in zakat this concept of nisab, the two types of nisab, which is the amount that you need to do ada of zakat. You have to fulfill zakat, and this time is the nisab of hirman. So just very quickly, for those people who may not have prayed this before, may not remember. So the nisab of hirman is, in essence, the same amount of the threshold is the same amount, which is which we've talked about in terms of the weight of silver, 612.36 grams of silver, but or if it's equivalent in value, obviously. But what we count, so the thresholds are the same, but what we count in them is different. So in the zakat of ada, we only count those things which are, by essence, it grows. It has the ability to grow. It has the ability to become more. So like cash, gold, silver, business stock. But on the other side, where the nisab of hirman is considered, then anything which is beyond a person's basic needs are also considered here. So the idea is that if a person has a whole load of clothes, if you remember, then the clothes that they need for that year is their essential needs, but then beyond that, whatever they've got, that's going to be considered in this nisab of hirman. So hopefully this is jogging memories for people. So that's the kind of richness we're talking about here, whereby a person has beyond daruratul asliya, beyond their basic needs, to the extent of this much amount of money, the same amount that we would need for triggering the zakat. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that was somewhere in the region of 350 or 400 pounds. Then if a person has all these extra things that they have beyond their daruratul asliya, beyond their basic needs, they have extra phones, they have extra car, an extra car, or maybe they have extra laptops, they have extra phones, we have extra shoes, all of these things, all these extra things, you add it all on, if it equals to this, let's just say 350 or 400 pounds, whatever the threshold is, that means they are now rich enough to pay nafaqah to their parents. Hopefully that makes sense, because the idea of this, why are we considering this? So hopefully the concept of this will make sense to everybody. The reason we're considering it like this is because your parents are, in essence, they're in poverty. They don't have enough to pay for their clothing, their food, their shelter, right? They don't have basic needs. And you here are lavishing out in extra goods. Why have you got all of these extra things? Sell all of those things and convert it into cash to be able to give to your parents so they can afford their food and their basic needs. So that's the concept here. You can understand the concept. Why are we considering the nisab of hirman in considering this person able to afford the nafaqah of his parents? So this is hopefully understood. So it says that a man, it's wajib upon him that he spends upon his parents, his grandparents, going upwards. Grandparents includes both the paternal as well as the maternal grandparents, right? If the grandparents or parents are poor, they're not able to earn for themselves, they're not able to pay for their nafaqah. So then what will happen? The person will have to pay. This person who's related to them, to their parents, obviously, or to grandparents, they will have to pay. Now, when it comes to the parents, right, even if the parents are able to earn, but they're not earning, they won't be made to earn. They won't be told that you go and earn now. Whereas for a child, for example, let's say the boy reaches maturity. The father doesn't have to pay the nafaqah of this child anymore because he's reached maturity. Why? Because the child will be now told that go and earn for yourself now, right? So obviously the father can carry on paying for them, but the idea, Shari'i idea here is that you do not owe them because they're able to earn. So, but with the parents, that's not the case, because Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. So live with them in this world in goodness, with goodness. Now, it's not ma'roof, it's not good that you are going to tell your father, for example, at the age when he's probably now should have retired, that go and earn for yourself and, tire yourself out. Because we are told as children to remove the tiredness and fatigue from our parents. So you're going to be telling them that get yourself earning so you can, so tire yourself out for that. No, the person will be told that, look, you have all of these extra things. You shouldn't be buying these extra things. Save that money to give to your parents. So that's the idea behind this. Now, even if the parents are of a different religion, right, they will still be given nafaqah. So nafaqah is regardless of their religion, they will be given nafaqah, because the whole concept of the verse that was revealed regarding Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, if you understand, is in relation to his mother, who was obviously a non-Muslim. So a person shouldn't be living lavishly in all the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to them, and then leaving their parents just to die out of hunger, or they don't have clothing to keep themselves warm, or they don't have shelter. All of these things need to be taken into consideration. Obviously the grandparents will also be considered in amongst the same category, and going upwards in amongst the same category as the parents, because grandparents often take the place of the parents when the parents aren't there. So in terms of the inheritance, in terms of the right to marry off, all of these kind of rights, all of these kind of responsibilities that will be fulfilled by the parents. Normally the grandparents are the ones who take on the responsibilities when the parents aren't there. So that's that. Now, a rule just to understand that the only people that will ever be given nafaqah when they are different in religion, despite them being, you can say, different in religion, is the wife, firstly. So if the wife is Ahlul Kitab, she will still be getting nafaqah. Likewise, the parents, right, they will still get nafaqah. The grandparents, the usul basically, they will all get nafaqah. And likewise, the furu', meaning the children and the grandchildren and going down, great-grandchildren, they will always get nafaqah despite their being different in religion. So these are the only three groups of people that will get nafaqah despite them being different in religion. Any other person, like for example a brother or a sister, if they're different in religion, they are not owed nafaqah, or an uncle, or whoever else it is. So hopefully that is understood. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. So just to summarize what we've done, we went through from the beginning of Kitabul Hadana, the people who are who get the custody, right of custody over this baby, of this child. So it's going to be the mother, then going upwards the mother's mother, and there's nobody upwards, then you go to the father's mother, and then you go upwards all the way, you got nobody in ascendance, then you go to the sisters of this child, you go sideways, sisters of the child, full sisters, then the one that has the same mother, then the one that has the same father, like this. So sisters next, then comes the maternal auntie, then comes the paternal auntie, in the same order, right? The full, then the halves in the order that we said before. Then comes the order, carries on going as we mentioned. It goes into a bit of detail. The nieces, and in between the khala comes in, and then the last niece comes in there, and then amma comes in, and then carries on going. Now the main ruling there is to understand, if then one of these females do get married to somebody who is not a mahram relative of that baby, of that child, then they lose their right, they lose their entitlement of custody. But that, like I said, it doesn't mean that they can't still continue to care for the child if nobody else is doing it or something, right? They can still do this. Then If there is no other women now, there's no women to take care of this child, then the right passes on to the males of that particular family, so the father, grandfather, and it carries on going in order of asaba. And the age that the females will keep, the mother and grandmother specifically, will keep the boy for is up till the age of 7, as we talked about, the age where they become independent. Then the father will get the child, and the girl will be kept up until she reaches maturity, until she starts to menstruate, and then she will be handed over to the father. But anyone besides the mother and grandmother will keep the girl up until she becomes somebody who people can desire. She starts forming features, bodily features, and she needs now being protected by the father. So then she'll be handed over to the father at that age. Then the Ahlul Kitab woman, she'll only get the child, she'll only keep custody of the child up until that child understands religion, after which the father, the Muslim father, will get the child. Then if the divorcee wants to move, so she can only move to a place which is her hometown, as well as the husband married her there. If it's a hometown but the husband didn't marry her there, she can't move there. If it's the husband married her there but it's not a hometown, she can't move there. It has to be both conditions found. And likewise, a few other rulings we covered in terms of moving from village to a town and everything else, city. So upgrading in essence is allowed, downgrading in essence wasn't allowed. So hopefully that should summarize that. Then we talked about the nafaqah of the parents or the ascendants, and that is owed to them, necessary to pay to them, because obviously you have to look after them. And who pays them? The person who has the yasarul fitra. We talked about the amount that they will pay sadaqatul fitr, and that is the amount of nisab of hirman, because nisab of hirman is considered over there, and I've explained the concept of that. And they will be given nafaqah even if they're different religion, and only these three groups, the wife, the usul and furu, the ascendants and descendants, will be given nafaqah if they are different in religion.